This podcast and content posted by Dr. Judith Joseph is presented solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from this podcast or website is at the user's own risk. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional diagnoses or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Hello, April. It's so great to see your face again.
Oh, it's so good to see you again. I love your energy. Honestly, I love your energy. So much information that you put out there is great information, especially on social media, but your energy is unmatched.
Oh, thank you. The last time I saw you, you were in New York City. You were actually in the vault where I'm seated right now.
Yes, I was.
And you were just coming right from it was like an on-air interview. I think you were on like the Tamron Hall show, but you were on a bunch of shows.
Yes. Oh.
And that was right before your book came out, and now it's a New York Times bestselling book. And it's a book that you co-wrote with your daughter, Cheslie. And I mean, tell me about what that's been like for you.
Honestly, it has been amazing. And you know, writing the book was something, especially trying to get the book published, but writing my part of the book and reading over her words became part of my grief journey. So when the book was finished, you know, it was both awesome and great, but it left this void because it was almost like, well, what do I do now? And but having an opportunity to meet with people and talk about Cheslie and talk about the book process has been wonderful. The people who have contacted me to tell me how the book has changed their life or how the book motivated them to talk to their loved ones or motivated them to go to therapy, outstanding. I mean, it did what it was supposed to do.
Well, I mean, I read your book and the words that Cheslie's wrote and you wrote, and it touched my heart. And it makes this work that I'm doing, researching high functioning depression, even more meaningful when I get to work with experts like yourself, with advocates like yourself, a family member. You know, you're all of these things wrapped in one. And so like when you agreed to read my book on high functioning depression and to write a blurb, I just so, my heart was so full. So I am so eager to hear your thoughts now that you've read my book.
Yes.
And so let's just jump right in, you know, with the explanation that I laid out with high functioning depression. I'm curious to hear about your thoughts on that and whether or not that resonated with what you've experienced.
100%. And it's so precise, and all encompassing, your definition, and bringing in the, Anhedonia and the Masochism, right? And the trauma piece. So many people ask me about Cheslie and high functioning depression. And I feel like I'm going into these long kind of trying to explain, mostly I feel like I'm talking about symptoms, but not really exactly what it is. And you beautifully have given not just me, but others language to use when we're trying to explain what it is. You know, after Cheslie passed, there were lots of questions floating around. And I think, you know, partly because people who saw her in one way. They saw one side of Cheslie, mostly her professional side, or the side she chose to allow others to see. I knew what high functioning depression was, and I knew that was a conversation that I'd had with another friend of mine, and it was Cheslie to a T. And so when I used that to talk about her in a post after she died, so many people came out with, what is that? What is high functioning depression? They would ask me, and I'm like, look, I'm not a counselor or therapist. I can tell you what it is, but I can't define it. And you in this book did a masterful job of defining it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That is very validating. And, you know, I had similar experiences when I speak with people. They're like, no one has the term for like what I'm experiencing. And that's something called affect labeling. When you give people the language to describe their experience, their emotions, there's less stress. There's less uncertainty. It's actually a therapeutic intervention to actually have a name for what you're experiencing, because that confusion is scary. It's so scary.
It absolutely is. And, interestingly enough, when I was talking to a friend of mine about high functioning depression, and this is long before Cheslie passed away, she was talking about it as it related to herself, but the more she began to describe what it was like, these light bulbs are going off, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's me. You literally are describing me. And so I remember talking with Cheslie about the symptoms that I saw in myself. And, there were so many parallels in her life.
Well, that was me too.
Yes.
As someone who has a child depending on her, a lab depending, like teams, employees depending, there's no permission to slow down. And I think it's an experience that a lot of Black women in particular experience, because we sometimes feel so lucky to be in the rooms that we're in, and we feel as if we can't stop. And a part of it is societal, like we have to keep going or else we're going to lose the opportunity. And I think that we're at most risk as A, woman, and B, as Black women, as women of color. And I just wondered, in reading your book and the words that you and Cheslie wrote, there's just so much, resonating there. It's like you don't have that permission to ask for help because you're lucky to be there. And I think that hits home for a lot of Black women in particular.
Absolutely. There is no room for error when you are, especially a Black woman. When we walk into a room, we are literally carrying every other Black woman on our shoulders. And if we mess up, we have cost all of those women their chance at an opportunity to be in that room. And I think every Black woman knows that. We see it when we see others make a misstep and we think, oh, great. Now nobody, they'll never let a Black woman do this again or accept that she can reach this level. It's a terrible weight. And I do think that there are so many Black women who, like you, like myself, experience this and don't know what to do with it.
Well, us talking about it helps for sure. When I go to conferences and I say it out loud, there's like a relief, like, we could stop being perfect,
Yes. And that feeling like I'm not the only one.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. When you talk about this, the inability to feel those high levels of joy, that hit me. And, in the book, Cheslie talks about that herself. Mm-hmm. And then, the other side of that, the masochism side, the level of self-sacrifice, I think even as a mother, and the constantly having to, put your feelings to the side, your emotions to the side, not feel what you need to feel because you've got to tend to everyone else. It just so goes hand in glove. You can't even take the time to celebrate your wins. I love that you talked about that in your book, the importance of celebrating your wins. But so many times it's like you can't take that time to celebrate your win because you're too busy serving everyone else.
Well, you are a mother of 6, right?
Yes.
You have 6?
Yes.
So I know that you understand what it's like to be a mother and, that numbness, because you want to be happy with your children. But when you're so busy and you're pushing through pain and trauma, you start to feel anhedonia. You start to lack the ability to feel joy. And it's almost like a coping mechanism to just numb how you feel, numb the pain. But then when you numb the pain, you also numb the joy. And then after a while, you just don't feel anymore. And so I think that's another thing that's like an aha moment. Oh, that's that feeling. Because when people go to their doctor and their therapist and they're trying to explain it, they're like, I don't know. I can't describe it. I feel meh, blah.
Yes.
But it's anhedonia. It's the inability to feel.
Yes. So true. And, I said this in the book and I still wrestle with it. Busyness. Because for me, busyness can numb the pain. Work is almost like my addiction, and busyness is, the coping mechanism of my addiction. And, I've had to learn, I love everything you put in the book. I've had to learn, not just setting my boundaries, but understanding how to respect my own boundaries. And I still struggle with that. I have to talk to my husband who can see it, because I'm in the throes of it and I don't even realize I'm doing it. But he can see it. My, assistant can see it. My best friend can see it. And I have given them that permission in my life to say, you really are doing too much.
Yeah.
Slow down and
true.
celebrate some wins. Slow down and celebrate some wins.
Well, April, you and I have the same issue, right? Like it's my drug of choice. It's the work, the busying. And I talk about the tips in the book that I use to ask for help, like literally use the people in my life to be like, slow down. Like if my hair is frizzy, if it's in a bun and it's not kept, if my nails are chipped, I need to slow down, because there are certain signs that we each have. It's our tell, right? For how we know we're too busy. It's like, that pinky nail is a little too jagged.
That's so true. That is so spot on. It is so spot on. The signs are there. The signs are there. I remember talking with my assistant, who is phenomenal, and when I was telling her some of the things that I just needed to work on with myself and just being more aware. And it was saying yes to everything, because I didn't want to hurt someone's feelings, or I really felt like I could squeeze that into my schedule or what I needed to do. And in actuality, nothing could be further from the truth. And so she had permission to tell me, if you add that, you need to subtract something.
I love that.
Because your plate is full. And, it was great. It was so helpful. And she would actually do the no part for me. She would reach out to whomever and say, I'm so sorry, her schedule is full. She's not going to be able to do, fill in the blank. And honestly, I love that. I need those people in my life, because like you said in the book, there's so many times you just won't realize that's what's going on with you.
Yeah, the math was not math in there. I love that. If you need to make up your own mantra, if you need to get a friend to do the work for you, so be it. Yes. And the masochism part is the part that I really wanted to put in there, because it was taken out of the Bible of psychiatry. People don't even know about it. But for many years, for decades, it was something that was used to classify women who said yes to everything, but they were saying no to themselves. And when my therapist pointed that out on me, I was like, more people should know about this. But there was this like hidden rule in psychiatry that word, you're not supposed to say it. Not to say that everything was right with that word. Clearly there were problems with the word, but the things that were right were, a lot of times we say yes, and we're saying yes in a sacrificial way. And we think we're doing someone else's service, but it turns out that when we sacrifice and bend over backwards, people resent us. They don't actually thank us. What happens is that they blame us when things go wrong, and when things go well, they don't thank you. So who wins in that situation, So I felt that it was important for people to understand masochism. And a watered down way of saying masochism these days is people pleasing, but it's so much more than that, because you are literally hurting yourself in order to please someone else who may not even appreciate it. And I think that resonates a lot with people who have high functioning depression. It may not be a partner. It may not be a family member, but it could be a boss. It could be an organization or a coworker. And at the end of the day, we're not going to be like, I wish I had 5 more minutes of work. I wish I had 5 more minutes of laboring. We're going to wish that we had 5 more minutes doing the things and the purposes and with the causes that we loved and the people that we loved, Absolutely. Not these things that keep us busy.
100% spot on. And, I spent 30 plus years of my life in human resources and business strategy. And, now as a mental health advocate, I've kind of, merged the two together, and I talk to a lot of professionals. And one thing that I always tell leaders and even rank and file employees is end your day. End the work day, put it down, and go do something else. Otherwise, there will be an expectation. If you continue to answer those emails at 10 p.m., there's going to be an expectation that you answer those emails at 10 p.m. So set your boundary. And I often will quote Shonda Rhimes, who of Shondaland, who is just a phenomenal creator. And famously in her email signature, she says, I don't respond to emails on weekends or after 7 p.m. And if I'm your boss, may I say, put your phone down. And I remind people, you need to do that. You don't have to sacrifice yourself. Work is a journey for most of us. It's going to be there tomorrow. So take time for yourself and let tomorrow take care of tomorrow.
I love that. Work is a journey. And I'll add to that, is a never ending, never finished journey.
Yes, it really is. It really is. I'm telling you. And, I would talk to people in a variety of industries, and, there are some positions where, for them, they show up, they do the work that day. Air traffic controller, people who, work in sometimes service industry, it's there. And then, someone else is going to manage that work because it can't stop. But I stress to those people the importance of taking your day off. If you get PTO, use it. You don't have to give 365 days if you are entitled to some time away from work. Take it. Take that time away. Same thing.
Take it or else you lose it. And don't assume that because someone has a smile on their face, that they're not complaining, that they're doing their great work, that they are not struggling. Because let me tell you, some of the people who are doing the best work with the biggest smiles, who are lighting up rooms, are struggling. But their whole identity is wrapped up in this work, that productiveness. And they don't know how to be something else. They think that they're not lovable if they slow down. They think that they're not worthy if they don't finish the work. So I think it's important that you are in positions of human resources where you're educating people about this, because I think people don't know. They just see like productive employee, productive leader, everything's fine. They never complain. They're smiling. They're bubbly. But they need to know that this looks different across the board, and you're going to miss out on the people who need help the most because they're not showing it. They're not letting their guard down.
100%. Absolutely. And I think, something else that I really, really love about your book is when you are telling those anecdotal stories, because it does allow you to see how it shows up differently for people and what they are doing, just understanding their stories, which is so helpful. And it's one of the reasons why when I talk to people, I share my story, in hopes that it will encourage them to share their story. Something might be similar, but many things might be different. And share that, talk about it, which, is so important and so healthy. And one of the things that you also mentioned in the book, not holding that in, but being able to let it out. And I think people don't do that enough.
They don't. And I think that they just don't know how to, or they don't think it's acceptable. But if we all learn that this high functioning depression looks different, that people can be high functioning, that they could be doers and they still need help, two things can't be true, then they know how to ask. They know how to check in more. And I'm curious to ask you about the 5 V's, like the tools, because a lot of times people are like, okay, I know what it looks like. You've educated me, but like, what should I do now?
Yes.
And, the 5 V's, validation, acknowledging your feelings, because a lot of times we just push through our pain, acknowledging it, accepting it, venting it, getting it out, expressing it to others. 3, the values, what really gives us purpose in life, what keeps us going intrinsically, not extrinsically, and vitals, how to take care of our body and brains. And then vision, how to celebrate our wins, how to plan our future so that we continue focusing on the things that matter. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that framework and whether or not parts of that really hit home for you.
Every part of it. And I love that because I'm such an action item person. It's not enough to just know it and understand it. I want to know how to apply it and what I can do now. What is my next step? And so I love that you put that so succinctly. The validation part is where I missed the mark. So many times, the venting, which, it wasn't something that I did. And I even talked about that in my book. I had everyone else to take care of, and I just would tell myself in my own brain, suck it up and get over it, get past it. You have all these other things to do. And no matter how I felt, I was not going to talk about it. I was not going to express it. I was not going to journal. I was just going to let that day be done and try to move into the next day, and to really emphasize the importance of getting that out, was everything. And the vitals part is so important to me. I think that's, I don't tout myself a health nut, but I do pay attention to what's going on with my body. And after Cheslie died, I didn't recognize my own body. I didn't realize what trauma, that level of trauma, will do to your health, your physical health, not just my mental health. And so I felt like I really didn't know what to do. I remember talking to my physician because things were changing and I didn't know how to reverse it. And, I talk about it in the book. It's not that I wanted to die. I just didn't care if I lived. And so I was in this weird teetering place. But prior to Cheslie's passing, I am religious about my health, what I eat, getting enough rest, going to see the doctor because of my age, seeing specialists, like getting my mammograms, like everything. I'm so focused. And I realized that I had stopped doing that. And so I love that you put that in there, not just the physical, but your emotional health. It's so it's so important. And so I love the way that you just kind of put those things out and then gave these action steps on how to address this piece. It's great.
And thank you. And the part that you wrote about in the book and Cheslie wrote about in the book about the vitals with regards to tech and how we need to start asking our patients about technology, because the amount of bullying that young people get, that young adults get, after a certain age, you start having thicker skin, you know who you are, your brain is developed, but your brain continues to form in young adulthood. So if you're exposed to that level of harassment and you're a public person for that many years, that impacts your development. And so having these conversations, being aware of how tech impacts you is so important. And I don't think a lot of people know about it. So I wanted to definitely keep that in there because we're seeing more and more of this these days. It's impossible to get away from our phones. They're just with us at all times. So understanding that, and also how relationships impact us, how attachment to others impacts us. And the studies show that, the quality of relationships are the number one predictor of your longevity. So when you are with the wrong person and you're not in a healthy relationship, that could really make or break you, right? And so I think if people understood that this is actually science and this is a way to take care of your body, this is not just eating well, sleeping well, moving.
Right.
All of these things impact your biology. Then we know what to do about it, right? It's that light that I talked about that goes off oh, this is what I'm dealing with. Now I feel empowered. Now I can actually do something about it.
Yes. I love that, you added some things about Cheslie in your book. and highlighted that, you know, behind the scenes, she was dealing with a very difficult relationship, which was impacting her. That people, you know, she didn't make that part of her life public for a number of reasons, but it affected her, you know, it affected her health in so many ways. And even when she came out of that relationship, it was very difficult for her. And she continued to work at not allowing that to define every relationship after. The trauma of that, undeniable. But the importance, to your point, of maintaining healthy relationships is so important. And I don't know that we give that enough focus and priority. I have, you know, friends and other people in my life, and I see them, you know, obviously on television and on social media, and they are going through very difficult, dark times, and they have this attitude of, yeah, but I'm just going to stick with them. I'm just going to stay with her. And I just think, what is that doing to your health physically and mentally? It's unfortunate that we think that you have to do that, when in actuality, to your point, it's affecting your mental health in ways that can be, for some, irreversible.
Well, you know, and that's something that's relatively new science, right? Like we didn't talk about this years ago. In fact, we never even knew that, like, when someone who you're partnered with enters a room, your body changes, like your biochemistry changes when that person enters the room. If we knew that, we would put a lot more thought into, like, okay, let's teach little kids how to pick the right partner early on, you know, because we teach them how to brush their teeth at what? I don't know, like 2, you know, how to potty. But maybe we need to start teaching them, okay, you know, whoever you pick in life, that's going to determine your longevity. Like, that needs to be a part of the conversation, because that is the science. And if we knew that, we wouldn't stay in these relationships but we just don't know. We just get so attached, and we've all been there. But I don't think we knew until fairly recently how this impacts your health, like you stated. So it's important to talk about it. It decreases the shame, right? Because we want to stay in relationships because of the streak, right? Like, human beings love streaks. We like to outrun, you know, our goals at the gym. But the same goes for relationships. We love the streaks. And, like, sometimes it's okay to say, listen, it's been a couple of years, but, you know, it's ending. And it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It just means this is not healthy for me right now, right? But I do think, hopefully, I keep my fingers and toes crossed that this is the way we're going in life, that younger people are learning more about, like, the impact of relationships, and both friendships and family relationships and romantic relationships, how this impacts their health, and they're making more informed decisions. So I think we're on a positive trajectory here.
I would 100% agree. Honestly, I was talking with my oldest daughter yesterday. She's 35, and she was commenting on me and my husband. We will be married 20 years next year, but we've been together a little bit longer because we dated. But she talked about that, and you know, I'm like, I don't want to romanticize this for you. There's a lot of work that goes into having a relationship that long, and you know, all years, all months aren't great months, but the ability to have someone in that kind of close proximity that respects and supports your mental health and your physical health is key. You know, David is my second husband. My first husband, there was a lot of struggle in that relationship, and I could see where it impacted my mental health in ways that if I had known then what I know now, I would have set different boundaries and probably handled things a little differently. But I didn't know, and I want to make sure that my children know I don't want to romanticize relationship because, to your point, who you bring in that close proximity can affect many things, including longevity. And so, I remember telling my children, I don't want anybody to get married before the age of 26. You're not even done developing. You don't even know who you are yet. And to have someone that close to you who is now going to alter who you are because you are going to join with them through life, that's a heavy load. And so, now they've all, except for my younger two, have passed 26 and nobody's gotten married. And I'm like, okay, guys, look, I want to be the mother of something. Bridegrooms. I know you guys heard me.
You're like, your brains are ready.
It's as much my day as it is yours. But no, I'm so glad that they take a very different approach to relationship. I think that's so important.
Well, as someone who is divorced and who has high functioning depression, I could tell you it's not easy to break a streak. You want to be perfect. You equate perfection with, time or points.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, understanding your health and doing what's best for your health is the best choice. You only get one body. You only get one brain. You got to take care of it. And I really do hope people learn about their bodies. I hope they learn about their brain in this book, that they understand the mind-body connection, that they see that on the outside, you may look like one thing, but on the inside, you're struggling, and two things can be true, and that they feel empowered to take the steps in the right direction to, put their health and their mental wealth first. Thank you so much for reading this book and for supporting my work and for trusting me with your book before it was even on shelves. And I mean, it really, I tell you, I wrote it, when I was reading it in one sitting on that plane, I couldn't put it down. It spoke to my heart. And I really do hope that my work and my book made you proud.
It absolutely did. Now, I have a question for you. My hope was when people read that book, the book that I did with Cheslie, that they might see themselves there and seek help or use that to start a difficult conversation about their mental health and where they are. So what is your hope when people read your book?
That's a great question. I hope that people understand the cause behind their high functioning depression. Because again, going to doctors and being told, well, you're fine because you're showing up to work and you're doing well. Come back when things get worse. I can't tell you how many times, April, I've gotten those DMs from people saying, no one is taking me seriously. This is me. What you're describing is me. I wanted to put something out there to help people understand what they're going through, to validate them, to let them know that you're not alone. This is what's happening. I believe you. You are seen. And these are the tools to cope. This will help you. And I really hope that people use these tools. There's 5 V's. You don't have to use them all at once. Some of us are high functioning. We want to use them all at once. Some of them will help you and serve you some days, and some of them won't. There's this rule of 2s. You shouldn't really try more than 2 new things. I really hope people can use 1 or 2 at a time, that, it allows them to feel vulnerable, to vent, to open up about what they're going through, to not feel so alone, and to get the help that they need and that they deserve.
I love that. I truly love that.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation and for your support. And I know it won't be the last one, but I really appreciate you and all that you're doing. And I appreciate you coming on to talk to me about this book.
I appreciate you. And I'm truly honored that you asked me to read your book and share some insights. Thank you.
Thank you.